Hello, my name is Kyle Steele. I'm running for Norman City Council, Ward 6 in the upcoming election cycle. And this is a video I wasn't anticipating on having to do until the first week of December. Essentially, I was wanting to wait till all the candidates declare to kind of put out a video like this of what sets me apart from them. However, since Councilmember Hinkle announced a couple days ago on the Ward 6 Facebook page that he is rerunning for the seat, I figured this would be a good opportunity for me to at least put out a video of what makes me different from the incumbent, so that those who are following the election cycle already can at least start to inform opinions on, myself and Hinkle, the two candidates who have declared at this point, to my knowledge. I'm going to be mainly talking about two things on how I'm different from the incumbent. The first is just a simple policy level discussion, and then the second is a more platform level difference. So first, just to get the policy level difference over with real quick, it's going to be the TIF vote. Councilmember Hinkle voted for the TIF back in September of last year. I would have voted against it if I was in his shoes. There are a bunch of, kind of little reasons for me that built up on why I would not have voted for that TIF, but the number one reason is essentially that the residents of Ward 6 did not want it. I believe that regardless of your opinion on a stance, you're not elected to push your own views on the city council in this case. You're elected to represent the ward, in this case, Ward 6. And from what I could tell, at least, Ward 6 did not want this TIF to go through. There was a poll done on Facebook about a week before, maybe a few days before, that essentially said, hey, what are your thoughts on the Arena and Entertainment District TIF? And 80% of people said that they were, against this TIF. And then about another 10% said, well, they wouldn't mind an arena and entertainment district, but they don't want the city to pay for it. Now, I understand, it's a Facebook poll. It's not official. It's not concrete. However, when you combine that with other data points that were available at the time, for example, then Councilmember Holloman was stated that he was receiving emails that were 7-1 against the TIF or wanting the TIF go to a public vote. It kind of just paints a picture that clearly the ward didn't want this. The law, there was already a lawsuit that prevented it from going to a vote of the people. I don't think that, that lawsuit should have been rewarded by then allowing the TIF to go through and forcing the citizens initiative petition to have to happen in the first place. And we all see how that's playing out in the courts currently. So once again, Hinkle was pro TIF. I believe it needs to go to a vote of the people. So if I was in his shoes, I would have voted against it, and I will continue to vote against TIFs that are exorbitant, that the people of Ward 6 want to vote on. The next is for the policy, not the policy level, sorry, the campaign difference, and how I feel I could better serve Ward 6 in a capacity outside of, the city council. I'm a big believer in transparency. It's probably the number one thing I personally look for in a candidate, and the reason for that is when I'm looking to elect someone, I'm not just electing them for their stances on the current issues. I'm also electing them for issues that are going to be coming up in the future that we don't know about, right? I believe that a candidate should, down the line, let's say in this case, 18 months, the middle of their next term, if an issue comes up that wasn't covered on the campaign trail, or, new information has come out, and they should be transparent about what they're seeing and say, hey, constituents, or hey, in this case, Ward 6, this information is coming up in the city council. This is probably going to be a pretty good issue, or pretty big issue rather. What are your opinions on that? And if they're not being transparent about that, you don't know when these issues are going to come up, right? Like, we as voters, as residents of Ward 6, as citizens of Norman, we could only give our opinions on issues that we know about, and we could only know about them if our elected representatives or local advocacy groups are being transparent. If they're facilitating that flow of information that they're getting down to their constituents. Now, I'm not saying that Councilmember Hinkle is not transparent, right? That is not my call. That is your call as a voter to say if he's currently being transparent based off of your values and what you believe the definition of transparency is. I could only say that to me, transparency means kind of explaining the critical votes. You know, what is your methodology for how you arrive to why you voted on these major issues? You know, what paths did you take? What research did you do? You know, who did you talk to? What groups did you talk to? What meetings with ward residents did you hold, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel that the current incumbent is not doing that to my personal standard. You know, as for what transparency would look like for me if I was elected, I've said it in my campaign introduction video, but essentially, you know, every couple weeks, just posting on Facebook kind of what I've been up to give people that opportunity to speak. This video on YouTube is a good example of that transparency. You know, if you go to my YouTube page for my campaign, which is KyleForNorman, you'll see that I've posted summaries of every city council meeting that's been streamed since mid-October. And, you know, that's just to give people the opportunity to know what's going on in local government, to be transparent about what's going on so they can give an opinion if they want to, no matter how mundane the issue. And, you know, like I said, I just feel I could do that better just because of my background in IT. Finally, I do want to give a personal message to Councilmember Hinkle. First off, you know, I do wish you luck on your campaign, and I do want to thank you for your service up to this point. You know, while I have disagreed with you on your TIF vote, obviously, I have agreed with you on many of your other votes, and our disagreements on TIF policy does not take away from the work that you've done for the city council and for Ward 6 up to this point. So once again, thank you for that. You know, I look forward to campaigning against you for the Ward 6 seat as the months go on. And I could only hope that, you know, between you and me or anyone else who's running, who happens to be watching this video, that we could at least keep this to be a positive campaign. You know, I could at least say on my end, I'm not going to resort to personal attacks of anyone who's not going to run, because, you know, while the person running, while their background does matter, we don't benefit our community by attacking them on a personal level. I believe that when we debate the policies, you know, debate the platforms, you know, we should be talking about why we can better serve our constituents, or why we could better serve, in this case, Ward 6 and the other candidate. And that is how we get the best candidate for the ward and who could serve our community for the next 2 years. You know, if you, Councilmember Hinkle, or anyone else who's running, you know, wants to have a sit down with me, you're welcome to message me on Facebook anytime. You know, my door is always open. You can email me as well. And on that note, to anyone watching, hey, if you made it to the end of this video, thank you for watching the entire thing. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about my campaign, feel free to email me at KyleForNorman@gmail.com. You know, if you choose not to, then I hope to, you know, see you on your doorstep sometime soon. And hey, let's have a good campaigning season. You know, thank you again for everyone. Have a good day.